And we're live, everybody. Hey.
I'm
Hello.
nice.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. All right. I guess we can introduce everybody and we're live, everybody. Hey.
We're on. So who we got here today? Who wants to go first?
I think we
Nobody wants to go first.
I think
Everybody
we should start
jump
with our
in.
guest host there, Augie Peterson.
Oh, hi. I'm Augie Peterson. I'm a writer and a podcaster and part of this insane group of people. I am going to be interviewing multiple people today, and I have lots of questions I've written down. So, hi. And I'm not nervous at all. Don't worry about it.
None of us.
We had a lot of beard talk prior to, so everybody should be okay. So
Yeah.
And to anyone who's just tuning in, my cat is definitely going to probably jump on me or interrupt the stream at some point. So I'm sorry if I suddenly jump up or like dart.
You wouldn't be a writer if you didn't have a cat, Gary.
Exactly.
And for listeners, Augie has a very nice background that a cat would love to play in. So it's going to be a struggle for her cat.
Part of my soundproofing is a slightly used mattress, and that's what she's like climbing up right now and like up on the ledge of. So that's what's going on there.
All right, now we got Brooks with us, right?
Oh yes, that's me, Brooks Bigley. Hello. I don't know what I am, but I'm here. I'm the biggest fan. That's what I am.
I have you listed as social media guru and fanboy.
Oh, okay. Sage also that works, I guess. Yeah. Hello, everybody.
Oh,
Aww.
We got
Hey.
the author.
We have Warren.
Warren!
Warren, everybody, we're so happy.
Gracious, man. I had to
Yes.
climb mountain.
Oh, I heard you had to climb a mountain. I understand. You are there. Okay, we had a little break up there here.
All right, man. All right, so we got author Gary Buller. Right?
Hello. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Nice to have you, buddy. We got Jason. What's up?
Hi, what's going on? Don't worry, I'm just having a Coca-Cola because it's only 2 p.m. here. I'm not ready to get going rock and roll
Coffee.
yet, you know. So,
So wait a minute, you're making me look bad, buddy. Thanks.
well, I mean, it is an hour later for you, you know, on a Sunday.
That's true. All right, we got Warren who traveled all over the world just to get to us.
Man of the hour here.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, gotta happen. Gotta make it happen, you know.
Thank you so much for joining.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Honor to finally get to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise.
Nice. Everybody's been digging your job there, Warren. You made a great job there with your voice. I think everybody in the room was talking about it. It's really good, and everybody's excited about a cat. So let's go to our host.
Sorry. My cat, the star of the show.
What's your
All right,
cat's name?
Augie, it's all your show.
cat's
You can start here and ask all the questions you want.
Hey, we forgot, Brian. You didn't really mention who you were.
Sorry.
The cat took her out. Oh, no.
Yeah, that's
Just
me.
in
I'm
case
sorry.
anybody doesn't know.
I had nothing to do with this episode at all. Except, well, I guess I did, but you know.
Showing Sorry. No, I'm not.
What the
Plugged in my phone because it told me it was dying, and now there we go. All right, sorry. Disregard.
You warned us.
We prefaced. The situation is better.
Yeah.
Did you eat a banana yet, Gary?
I can dig it out if you want.
Hey,
Why was it so pretty when you were showing it?
Augie, the people in the room want to know what your cat's name is.
My cat's name is Pumpkin.
Nice. So basically, man is your cat. That's awesome.
I swear
The Pumpkin King.
Oh
The cat took her out again.
my
It's like,
god!
screw you and your podcast.
So right now, her cat just killed her.
Oh, it's my phone cord.
We have no
I'm gonna
hope.
charge my phone.
The cat
my
is very
God.
upset.
This is the worst live stream ever. Okay.
This is the
Now
best.
it's
Come
just
on.
and it should charge, and my cat is gone, so everything's fine. Wow.
It's okay.
It's all good.
Twists and turns around every corner. Welcome to the gray room. Oh boy.
You need a drink after that.
That's for sure.
Whew. Sorry. Okay, carry on.
Well, you're the host.
You're the host.
Oh, right. Okay.
She forgot. She forgot.
Yeah,
I told you I was
you're
nervous.
the hostess
Okay.
with the mostest.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Okay, first of all, this episode was amazing for so many different reasons. It had an amazing story. We got to learn a little bit more about Raymond and the Bob character, and we heard about the warden, so he might be like making an appearance soon. I'm really excited. I'm like, not only am I excited that the story was amazing and the voice acting was amazing and the production was amazing, but the story that is between Raymond and the warden and Bob is all starting to come together, and like we're getting a story within a story, and it's like storyception, and I can't wait to see
That's a
like
good example.
where it all goes. So Brian or Jason, well, Brian's writing it, so Brian, are you able to talk about like a little bit about where that's going without being too spoilery?
No.
The phone will.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Is it Anna? I think Anna's calling.
It's a live performance of the story. It's awesome.
S.H. Cooper is calling right now.
Why?
So-
Call from Virginia. Call.
Hello?
Shh, everyone, shh. We got this.
All right, who am I speaking to?
It's live.
Hey, Vic. All good, man. Sorry, guys.
You're fine. This is the best. I love Warren.
Office where Michael.
I love Warren so
For
much.
those listening,
Call
we're
and
watching
it's
Warren
going
in
on
his
the
natural
floor.
habitat talking on the phone.
He's muted it. Oh dear, he's muted it.
Oh, okay. We could talk.
Oh,
Oh, that was awesome. It's like the president just got a phone call. Everyone, be quiet.
Part of the story has to deal with a phone call, so it's just so
Yes,
funny
it's
how that
awesome.
works.
Brian, why is it that everything that we produce or create has some kind of ripple effect in the real world somehow?
Okay, Warren's back. Warren, was that part of your script? Don't lie. You did that. That was awesome.
No, actually, guys, not so good news here on my end, but I'm fine and I'm here. You know, my dad just passed a couple of days ago, so
God.
a lot of
Sorry.
people phoning the
Sorry.
house here to give condolences and whatnot. So I'm in the midst of all of that, but it's all good. No, you know, I'm here. I'm coherent. You know, I'm gonna cry later and all of that business, but right
You can
now
cry
I'm
with
here
us.
and it's
It's
all
okay.
good.
Aw.
Yeah,
Oh,
Thank you
man.
for being here with us, Warren.
Yeah.
especially.
yeah.
Warren, this is terrible. Like,
I'm so sorry.
we could have.
No. Hey, you know, I mean, if I was some little weak, you know, wimpling guy, I'd go cry in the corner, you know, and just my tears would just flood the basement or whatever. But I'm
Men
not
can do
that
that
guy, you know.
Yeah, that doesn't make
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah,
mean,
you're good.
I'm not insensitive as well, or passive, but certainly I'm positive and spiritual. So
Yes,
it's
sir.
all good. Yeah.
Oh, your heart
thank
being
you.
here right now is awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Yeah.
Warren.
with family too, man. I mean, the Gray Rooms is all certainly that. You know, we've all been.
I know, man. I know. I feel a connection, man, even through the emails and and Jason having me doing 18 revisions and stuff, and it's fine. I loved it.
How many revisions?
Well, 19. Yeah. No. No.
I think he's being generous.
No, it's fine. It was good.
Perfect.
Good for me, man.
Warren did an exceptional job. You know, it's been a pleasure to be able to talk to Warren. He's been on part of this almost since the beginning. So actually, since the beginning. So that's finally an absolute pleasure to get to not just put a face to the name and the voice, but it's been an honor, Warren. So thank you. I appreciate you being here, especially in the circumstances. So thank you ever so much from all of us. Seriously, we appreciate
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. You're welcome, man. Shucks, it's my pleasure. This is in my livelihood, man.
How do you transition from that?
Yeah.
Well, Brian.
Yeah, I guess
Emotions.
to answer your question, you know, I think there definitely is going to be a lot of things that you're going to be seeing with Raymond. I can't really talk about what the warden's up to. But you know, one thing I will say that Jason and I had talked to about is that we don't really want people to know too much about the warden. We kind of like that mysterious sort of thing he's got going on, the fact that he's just this chaotic person. So I'm not saying we won't use him for the main story, but I think that if somebody just like expects like maybe the warden to just kind of pop into an episode and be like, yo, what's up, man? How's it going? It's not going to happen. Part of it, though, is because we didn't really expect the warden to be kind of a major person that people really like. I talked about that before. But the other thing is that the warden is voiced by Jason, and Raymond is voiced by Jason, and Bob was almost voiced by Jason.
Yep.
So, I mean, really, we didn't want it to be the Jason show, in a lot of cases. And I think that, when we talked about, well, what are we, maybe with season 2, if we're going to do some changes and things. But I think we'll use the warden sparingly. The patrons, if you do subscribe to us, donate to us and things, all of the bonus episodes will have a warden skit. The warden is going to be in February 15th, kind of twofer episode that will be for everyone. So you'll get some warden action on that. But outside of that,
I would have used different words, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking that the warden action there. But in terms of Raymond and Bob, yeah, I mean, you're definitely gonna get. I mean, I guess I had to kind of start things out and explain the rules of the Grey Rooms to people. Now that that's happening with episode 4, there was that weird kind of introduction with the wedding. And so now you're starting to think, well, okay, maybe this is some of Raymond's backstory. Part of what originally I had thought about doing is opening things up with the Raymond Bob introduction skit thing, doing the story, and then having a concluding part where it sort of had this weird, creepy kind of thing about Raymond that while he was kind of floating around in between, episodes, and just kind of, maybe getting bits and pieces, little nuggets of his past. And I thought, you know what, this is just too much for what we're trying to do. But then I realized that I could kind of sneak that in the beginning a little bit, make it short. So there will be some episodes where you will get some pieces of Raymond's past, maybe that kind of float in and kind of make a bigger picture for what's going on.
No, they kind of got a little bit of that on this episode.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, really, honestly, every even episode I figured was going to have some Raymond nuggets in it.
Oh.
I like the Raymond nuggets.
You mentioned the wedding thing was weird, but I didn't think it was that weird because it was in a way tangentially related to the last episode where the girl had just gotten out of a really serious relationship, so it was kind of mirroring that in a way. So I didn't think that was completely out of place because a lot of them like kind of carry over from the other one, and like he wakes up saying it's burning and stuff, but I also think that was somewhat relevant, so I don't think that was weird. I think that was a good transition, even if it was kind of just thrown in there in your opinion.
I think for Raymond, he's when he's waking up the next episode, he's reliving in that second that he's waking up the past life from the previous episode. So I think when he was burning, when he woke up, it was the chair from the prior episode. That he just completed that death, and he's waking up again in this gray room. That's the pattern that I've been noticing.
Yeah, and I really like that. And I was wondering, like, when I was submitting stories and thinking about stuff like why the stories are the main character has to die at the end, I think it's really interesting that it happens that way, where he's like kind of reborn into a different room and almost given a second chance in a way. But then it's just like more torture. It's like, yeah, I mean, you kind of get an inch and then you're dead again. And sorry.
Well, I mean, one of the rooms is supposed to be a salvation, so.
Well.
Yeah, the
he's not compelled to
chance,
pick that one.
He's just been making the bad decisions. It's his fault.
I've been joking around. I said, with 13 episodes or whatever, and obviously if there's 13, he must not be hitting the right ones to keep having episodes. So statistically, man, he sucks, right? I mean,
wrong door every time.
50-50 chance, buddy. Come on,
It's that singing voice. That singing voice scares him for some reason. There's something weird about that singing woman's voice that Raymond can't confront. So that's what's really cool. It's like, what is behind that door?
And that singing voice is Jason's wife, by the way, Chrissy.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well done. Very well done.
Yeah, she also plays the wife of Raymond in that wedding scene, which
right.
later on, retrospectively, me and Brian were both like, that's weird how that worked out, isn't it? We didn't intend for that, honestly. So, but it is what it is. So.
Yeah, Jason got married again. He renewed his vows in the cheapest way possible.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, one more thing that keeps happening, like a pattern I've noticed too, is the souvenirs, as Raymond is now putting it, that Bob keeps leaving. I'm so fascinated by the way Bob really likes to torture Raymond, but it's very indirect. It's like leaving these nuggets of like torture as souvenirs for him. And then I think a couple, like last episode maybe said something about joking about a pile of souvenirs at the end of season 1. And that finally clicked when I heard Raymond say that in the last episode. Yeah. Just keeps getting more and more souvenirs from these lives. It's just, it's pure psychological torture.
So you're saying I should maybe look into a merchandise line online?
Yes.
Where we could sell little like maybe
on my
charms or something like that for people from the ground.
You can sell furniture. You can sell
furniture,
animals.
I mean, heck, why not?
War memorabilia.
Yeah. And therapy.
We can sell shotguns from Way Out. I mean, why not?
Right.
There you go.
Oh dear.
I thought that was
hotel advertising.
The whole leaving souvenirs in the room thing and kind of getting to know Bob's character, where at a moment, like, he kind of says that he doesn't really get any kind of enjoyment out of what he's doing to Raymond. So it seems like maybe he's being controlled by somebody else. And we're not sure who that is, if it's the warden, if it's somebody else, if maybe it's like himself, like he's putting Raymond through the room so that he doesn't have to do it or something along those lines. I just think it's interesting because we actually got to know a little bit more about Bob's character as a person instead of just kind of this mysterious voice, you know?
I wonder if Bob, do you think that Bob is, I feel like he's annoyed by Raymond. Do you think that he's annoyed by Raymond because it's Raymond, or that he's just annoyed with, I am assuming he is not a human. I don't know. Do you think he's annoyed by humans? He just has this very tangible, specific hatred, I feel like, for Raymond that's very unspoken, but still comes out in how he treats him.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that, but that's, and it could also be projecting, like, the fact that he doesn't like what he's doing to Raymond, so he's annoyed because Raymond is doing exactly what he's supposed to do in these rooms, where it's like, oh, I'm torturing you, and you're supposed to, like, not hate it as much or something like that. He's a much deeper character than I think we initially expected, and I think that's really surprising. So
yeah, he's more than the voice.
More deeper character than Jason expected when he was doing the role.
Yeah. That's all Brian. That's a testament again of the excellent writing skills of Mr. Black.
Yes, Brian writes all of these skits. I don't want to say skit because it's the main story, but it's not the main story per episode. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We're a weird podcast. I mean, really, we are. We got Serial on. We got we got Serial. We got the anthologies, and then we got behind the scenes. So it's definitely pretty cool. I think though one of the Jason just recently from some of the later intros that I had sent to Jason, basically kind of. He's getting a little bit freaked out. Got a lot riding on his shoulder,
Yeah. I'll be the first to admit that sometimes it's you got to sit there and you just have to tell yourself, just do something. Just do nothing. Like, come on. Yeah, and I get these wonderfully written snippets of the main story from Brian, and it's just. What scares me sometimes is that I instantly go into overdrive with this universe in my head. So the second I read this, the room is twice as big. The sounds are more three-dimensional. Everything is like, if for example, if there was a monster in one, what's his growl going to sound like? Is there liquid in his breathing? It's just like I start thinking about all this stuff, and then it becomes, okay, well, I still have to put all the words to this too. So holy crap. Yeah. But it's fun. I enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun listening to it when it's all said and done.
That's another thing I was going to mention too, is Jason, you did all of the sound for this one, right?
Always.
Yeah. And it was so great. And also, like, the majority of the music for all of the episodes is great. But this one in particular, I thought was really interesting because as opposed to the other episodes that you've put out, this one wasn't as cinematic. It wasn't like a Batman movie, like you're turning around every corner and there's like a da-dong kind of noise. Rather,
Nice.
it's like this calm music, and the voiceover is what's really kind of putting the pictures together. And I think that was really well done, because this story is written, it seems like it's written for audio drama. Like, it's so descriptive, and it just like feels like you're a part of it, so you don't need those extra sound effects, and you really picked up on that. And I think that worked really well, really well. Like, an actual chill went down my spine when he was looking out the peephole and something like ran past the hallway and it freaked him out. It was just that sound. I just love that, because at that point was when I realized, oh, we're not hearing all these like cinematic kind of scary sounds and music like we normally do. It's very subtle, and it's like really kind of getting under your skin, making you feel safe, and then just scaring the shit out of you. Oh, sorry. I'm trying not to curse.
You're
No, you
fine.
can.
You're fine.
Okay.
That's all right.
Potty mouth.
I don't curse. I just kicked the second verse.
I want to piggyback off Augie. I've noticed too with episode 1, 2, 3, like the visual camera you'd have in your head, your scenes move around. But this one was a very central story in terms of, this was more in Warren's character's head of dealing with what was going on versus us watching what was going on per se. It was more dealing with Warren's emotion and going through it. So that was, you did an amazing job keeping it central. And of course, Warren's voice is just magic, so that helped. But it never got boring having that visual camera not moving all over the place. The story never got boring, and that was because of how you wrote it too, Gary. It's just all a trifecta of wonderness coming together. But yes, production-wise, keeping our ears didn't get bored listening, even though there was not, as Augie said, there wasn't all this action going on and stuff. It was a really psychological thing to go through, to listen to, I thought.
And that's like a real thief for. Oh, sorry, Jason.
No, you're fine. That's exactly what it was. You know, it was unlike the first and second, and even the third story in some respects. Which the third story actually was still more centralized on the main character rather than just the big explosive things going on. But it did have an intense action feel at the end with the fire. But this one right here, the story is this room. This guy is in this one area, and the first thing I thought of when I thought of this room was it's going to just be a very muffled, quiet, kind of empty, alone sound. Like, this guy's all by himself in this room and he can't get out. He can't open the windows. There's when the phone call is kind of his only real branch to the world that he has. And that's kind of just what I really focus on. And then Warren really sold it, because the level of his voice, the bassiness, his reading, just of its own, I think that painted more of a picture than I could probably have done with any sound, because you just kind of had to build around that. And so the room was pretty much the focal point on that. So I appreciate you guys thinking that, that was really well done, because that's what I was going for, man. I was really not trying to blow your socks off. I was trying to make you feel this. You were him. You were Warren's character. That's what I was hoping.
And one thing, Jason, I feel like I heard this this muffled, almost the sound of like being underwater, and I felt like I heard that continuously through the story, and that just drove that feeling of amping up, like, what is going on?
Yes,
it just kept you there at the edge.
Yes.
You heard that?
That's
Augie?
funny you said that, because it's
too.
the inside of a submarine. That was the inside of a submarine.
Yeah, okay,
Oh, so cool. Because it was supposed to be like residual thunder in the room, but it sounded like you were underwater.
Yes.
And it was like a completely different sound, but it could have been thunder. So you're like, is this real? Is this not real? Am I hearing things? And it made it sound like a complete dreamscape, which I was just completely blown away with. I'm like, is he underwater? Like, where is he? I thought he was in a hotel.
And Warren's the one who sold all of that, by the way, though, too. I mean, I tell you, the second I got Warren's voice that went with that, I was like, okay, this is going to be a big story, just because of the big, huge voice that was associated with it. So it's awesome to hear everybody's feelings with it, because it's actually leaps and bounds what I hoped it would be. So
it was amazing. Warren, you did a fantastic
I'm glad that y'all got to hear it. I haven't heard any of them yet. I think I've heard
email.
Jason.
I sent you an email.
Should be the first person to hear it.
No, I went on the site and I did check out some of I forget which one it was. I mean, it's excellent. All of it is excellent. But I haven't checked out anything that I've done, and it's not only me, but I want to check out what everyone else has done as well.
Warren, you haven't heard Labyrinth yet? Have you heard Labyrinth?
No,
Labyrinth?
no, I haven't heard anything that I've done.
That's an affront.
No. I listened to Fallen once, and I think it was one other thing that I listened to that was great as well.
Holy cow!
So good. It was so good. I thought it was James Earl Jones. Honestly, I was like, "Who? How did they even?" I don't get it. And then I realized that it was just a little bit off, but it was such a nice, like, deep voice that really set the scene for the whole thing. You did a fantastic job. And actually, there's a question in the chat.
Well, you don't know what I went through to get into character, you know. I mean, I just got inside the thing, and I felt like I was the character from Lord of the Rings. It's my precious. No, not sorry.
Really sold it.
I went a bit dark there that time, but it's okay. No, but I really enjoyed doing it, Jason. I think that you have great vision. The writers, everyone that's involved behind this and making it happen. It was just really a great learning experience for me, and just an overall experience, just being able to dig into some things, and just the way the stories are written, you know, dealing with the spirit and afterlife and death and all of this. It was like, whoa, this is heavy, you know. So I just felt like I needed to step up to the plate and really make it happen to sell it. But I did it like wholeheartedly, you know. It wasn't like anything like from here. It was just like, you know, I had to come from here with it. So it was just like fun. It was intense. It was learning thing. It was just like all of that and a wiffle ball bat and some chocolates. You know.
So have you done?
No, it was absolutely amazing.
Sorry, Gary. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying the first time I listened to it I just thought it was absolutely amazing, and to hear my story sort of elevated in that way, sort of with that level of voice acting, was unbelievable, you know. As soon as I heard Warren's voice, I was like, my God, they picked a real good one here, you know. And I think that, and Jason's work in the background, as you say, with all those little subtle things, it's just, I think I said to Brian, it's just sort of elevated the story way above what it is on the page. And no, thank you all for it. It's absolutely fantastic. Particularly Jason and Warren for you know, what they did with it. Unbelievable. Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really.
Yeah, well, thank Jason, because he drilled me on. He was like, "Well, Warren, I need you to record this again, man, because I need you to." And he kind of molded me into, you know, like I was a piece of silly putty, man. And then so it was all good. So I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm there. I got it, Jason. I got it. I'm there." So it was great. It was all.
One thing too is this is something really special for Gary. You know, because you want to talk about what the story.
Yeah, let's talk about
in terms of everything we've done.
Questions, Brian.
Sorry, I didn't think you knew this. I just figured I'd throw that in there.
Oh gosh. Sorry, what was the question, Brian? In terms of what?
No, you know, this story wasn't it like the first you'd published or something? Like, you want to talk about?
Really?
So about 4 years ago, I'd not written any fiction at all from sort of since being at college and stuff. So I'm like 36 now, so it's been a while, and The Way Out was the first story I ever had published, or someone published of mine. It was like a bit of a bucket list to start writing and then eventually get a story published. So I sat down, started writing stuff, and I wrote a few different stories that never went out there, but The Way Out was the first story I sent out and had published. That was back in 2016. So it's quite special to me. It's the first story, that was ever accepted.
How did you start, like, with the concept for this story? What was the very first thing you wrote for this story?
Well, I was kind of inspired by work, because in a previous job, I used to travel all over England, Scotland, Wales. I used to work for a reprographics company, and I used to go into buildings and set up print rooms. And I spent a lot of time in hotel rooms, usually on my own, nothing else to do, just sort of trapped in there half the time. I didn't know the areas. Sometimes the areas were a little bit rough and I didn't want to go out. And And then all the while, I had a young daughter who was back home with my other half. So it was a bit of a lonely sort of period of my life, really. I wasn't really enjoying work. And the way out is, it started in my mind as being trapped in this hotel room with this, every single one. We tended to use a chain as well. So every single hotel room we stayed in had the same picture on the walls. So that's where there's this description of these 3 trees on the wall, because every single one I stayed in seemed to have the same pictures and the same furnishings, you know. So we use these branches. So anyway,
cutter hotels.
Exactly. And then one day I was driving somewhere and I was listening to On Writing by Stephen King. And there was that long sort of Finnish competition where you had to sort of write your own haunted hotel room story. And it sort of went from there, really. And the way out came out of that sort of experience of being trapped in a room, and I kind of sort of put a supernatural twist on it, which I won't sort of go into because it'll sort of spoil it a little bit. But
you can spoil.
Yeah,
we're assuming people have listened, right?
Well, everybody.
Yeah, we will talk about everything. Use words, anything you need.
Okay, no, that's cool. And so yeah, I thought I knew the ending and I knew what was going to happen almost as soon as I started the story.
Uh-oh.
I kind of knew limbo. And there's something in that bathroom, something with this weird light, and he didn't like this weird light. And I kind of knew at the very, very beginning that it was going to be that he'd killed himself because of his partner. She had cancer. She passed away. So it all came from that. And the cancer side of it came from my mum was diagnosed around the same time that I was writing it. She passed away last year, but it sort of started with that. So it's quite personal as well.
I had another question I wanted to ask. Did you, because you didn't exploit suicide, I felt like. Sometimes I've heard stories where it's like a cheap throwaway to end the story, or it was never that way. Have you ever experienced anyone that's gone through that? Or you captured the feeling, I feel, of someone that really woke up legitimately from this, somehow then going through it. It was well put together. How did you get it that way?
I don't know, really. I think I've said before, when I've been speaking to my friends and stuff, that suicide is always something that's sort of, I don't know, inspired might be the wrong word. Suicide's always been something that I've been slightly obsessed by, in a way. And to me, it's like the ultimate horror, the fact that you want to end yourself. So I touch on it in quite a few of my early stories. I've got a collection called Mechanisms of Despair, and The Way Out is in it, and its sequel, The Way In. And there's another story called Escape, which is also about suicide. And I just think it's such a lonely thing, and it's not a cowardly thing. It's a frame of mind when you're in that sort of situation. So I think the empathy sort of element kicks in when I think about suicide, and maybe that's how it came across in the story. I don't know, but there is a definite sort of feeling of empathy that I have.
I definitely felt that I didn't feel weird about it, finally knowing I kind of had a clue here and there that it was going to be about suicide, but wasn't sure. I didn't feel weird about it, so I felt that it was done so tactfully. But I felt that just that confusion afterwards, and that, I don't want to say desperation. It doesn't seem the right word, but I can't think of a better word to say. Just that quest to want to figure out what happened, but it wasn't. Yeah, there was some kind of peaceful way that he was trying to figure out what's going on. Like to me, it didn't feel like he was tortured by trying to figure it out. You're just tactful at keeping it at a point where, like, he needed to figure out where he was, what was going on. It was frustrating, but he wasn't losing his mind over it. And I didn't feel that he was losing his mind over it.
No.
Even after.
Well, listen, I'm sorry to interrupt, gang. I'm going to have to jet because I have some students coming up.
No worries.
If you didn't know, I'm a voiceover coach as well, so I have a string of students coming up, and I apologize for being late, but I made it in the time that I did.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And I'd love to hang out, and it was really, really great seeing you and meeting everybody. And I look forward to the next time if we do meet again or whatever. But definitely, I need to check out more of the Grey Rooms because I really love the stories. Really love, like I said, everything involved with it, and it was just an absolute blast. So, yeah. Once again, I really want to hang out more, but I have to jet.
Yes, sir.
And hey,
No worries.
Digital handshake.
Thank you,
Well,
Stacey,
man.
and thank you,
Yeah.
everyone. And
thanks, Warren. Thank you.
just we'll be in touch, I'm sure.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir. And
thanks very much.
Warren Richardson, voiceovers.com. Please feel free to stop in there and check out his stuff because Warren's been an absolute pleasure finally getting to meet you and actually working with you. And I do look forward to many, 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 many more of these with you, sir. You did a great job, and I'll make sure you get those links again. I'll resend them, and I'll make sure you get them. I want you to be able to hear the wonderful work that you did do.
Thank you so much, Warren. Sorry for your loss. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And our condolences from everybody in our universe to yours, man.
Absolutely.
No, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. It's all good. Just know that I'm all good. And
See
hey,
you later.
I really appreciate everyone's condolences and sentiments. And just know that we're fine. Me and my mom, we're here. We're working it out, and we're all good.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Yeah.
We're gonna leave a link for you on YouTube.
Yeah.
Hey, great. No, that's cool. That's cool. All right. So I'll be seeing you and carry on. Have fun. Have a good week, a Sunday, and we'll see you again.
See you,
Warren, if you could email me when you get back in the country, and then we'll talk some more. If you could, please.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's great. Fantastic.
Have a good evening or day.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Bye, sir.
Ciao, ciao.
All right. That's the end of Behind the Door for today. We'll see. No,
great, Warren. Man, I got to tell you, I got to just, to sidestep on everything real quick. Got to really give it to Warren for hanging out with you, even for the time that he
absolutely
did. And everybody out there that's listening and all that, if you get, go to his website, Warren Richardson, voiceovers.com. He has a little contact in there. If you want fans or whatever, if you have a second, send a guy an email. Tell him that you appreciate what he did, and let him know that
and
care about us means something. Means something.
Yeah. No.
One of the things he does is he does a good Elvis. So if you ever want to check his website out.
Yeah, I heard that. He did a great job. I was snooping on everybody, and I went on his site, and he has some really awesome stuff.
Is that on his website?
Oh, yeah.
Elvis impression?
Oh, yeah. Sweet. He's like marrying 2 people or something like that. He's an Elvis priest in LA or something like that.
Oh, he's an officiant. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. He did a great job.
So sweet. God, can you imagine that voice marrying you? Wow. Do you take this head?
Might have to make it happen.
All right, Augie, you're back.
Okay. So we went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I think we stayed on mostly the same path. I wanted to ask Gary if you got any of your inspiration from Stephen King's story 1408, because that is one of my all-time favorite stories from him. And I think you mentioned somewhere on your blog that you were inspired by Stephen King in some way. And I found this story in particular really interesting, but I also read The Way In as well. And that one actually happens like in the hallway as opposed to just in one room. So I think that was a really interesting perspective that you could have taken. So first question is, did you get any inspiration from Stephen King, and how did you make it your own? And then second question is, why did you choose this story instead of the other one? Is it just because it was like the first in a sequel kind of thing? Because I thought that this story was absolutely amazing. It was well written and perfect. But the second story, The Way In, is in a hallway as opposed to a room. So I thought that might have brought a different kind of setting to the whole thing, to the whole haunted hotel kind of deal. So what was the inspiration behind submitting this story instead of that one? Sorry, that's like a lot to deal with.
Yeah, no problem. In answer to your first question, yeah, absolutely inspired by Stephen King. I think it's hard not to be as a contemporary writer these days. Like I said, I was listening to his On Writing book when I was driving to work to stay in one of these hotel rooms, and that at the end of it, there's this competition, and they put out a long time. As part of his example in On Writing, he wrote 1408 and he sort of put it out there. So I love the short story 1408. I absolutely love I love the film as well. I really like the film.
Yeah, the film.
And I just really like the way it's a ghost story without being a ghost story. And that's sort of kind of what inspired The Way Out, because I didn't want the ghosts and the phantoms to be tormenting the guy directly. I didn't want him to be sort of skulking around this place, Scooby-Doo style, and, you know, these things jumping out on him. I wanted him to be very much a one-piece story with one person in a room. That's how I visualized it. Very claustrophobic, so I'm very trapped and he can't get out. So that's where that sort of side of it came from. Like I said, his only link to reality is the phone call. So, well, then that isn't really even reality either. That's some sort of like another dimension almost, or whatever. But in answer to your second question, The Way In came about 3 months after The Way Out. And the reason why I led with The Way Out, I think, was because of as I said, that was what was inspiring me at the time, the claustrophobic feeling of being trapped in a hotel room. The Way In came later, where I thought, well, what would be quite interesting is, instead of sort of revisiting the same sort of story about someone trapped in a place and just going with the same twists, I basically to look at it from a different viewpoint. And I don't know if any of you guys have seen a video that went around on YouTube about there was some screaming happening in a hotel room, and the security guard went up there and he opened the door and you just see this thing coming out. That partially inspired me. And I thought, wouldn't it be really cool if you had the other side to the story, and you got a guy going in there who's got his own problems, and you know, and he's opening this door, and it's the room from the first tale, and as he, you know, obviously has an encounter in there, and, you know, I allude to the fact that it is Dan from The Way Out. So yeah, it's just sorry, I don't want to ramble on, but yeah,
no, keep going.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Sure four, brother. Sure four.
Yeah.
So that's why it came in that order. It was simply, I didn't have an idea for sequels in my head. I thought when I wrote it, it didn't even cross my mind there was going to be a follow-up. It just kind of happened about 3 months later, and the publisher was really happy to get publish another story by me in the same sort of canon. So that's how it happened.
That's awesome. And at the same time too, we were saying how it's a very claustrophobic feeling in the story that was.
There's somebody in house, Brooks.
I know, it's the wife.
Sorry,
Augie.
That's okay. It's very claustrophobic, but at the same time, he's surrounded by spirits who have experienced the exact same thing he has. So he's like supported, but he's also extremely claustrophobic and like on his own, just kind of dealing with the visions of these people. And it's not triggering anything in his mind until he sees those letters at the end. So like, he's alone, but he's also being around people. And I think that was a really interesting contrast to, you know, what you had written. And it was so well done. It was really, really well done. You did a great job.
Augie,
thanks very much.
So like when he looked out the window and saw the gardener, you know, can I like ask you like questions about that world? Like, did this guy, was he repeating this action over and over again? Does that mean that Dan maybe was doing this also over and over again? Or is it just Dan discovered his body the same way that, well, because the gardener didn't discover anything. It's interesting to me because the gardener already had the wounds and then seems to repeat the process. Whereas Dan was not inclined to go climb up anywhere to take his own life. He just discovered his body.
What happened to Dan after he discovered the body at the end of that? Like, it kind of just stops. Like, what do you think he did there, Gary?
Well, if you read the follow-up...
I'm trying not to, like, pick that. Yeah, I didn't read the follow-up. That's the problem. I don't want to plead ignorance here.
No. I just think it's kind of interesting, the idea of some religions sort of say that if you commit suicide, there's this sort of limbo, and you're sort of maybe trapped in a particular place. I kind of when I was writing it, I had this idea that you had a guy trapped in a hotel room, and then outside you had someone else trapped in their own little space. Yeah. And as one of you sort of said, he's sort of trying to work it out, because how that happened to you, then it would take you a while to figure out what happened. You know, time might operate differently in that sort of world, you know. Yeah. Perception might operate differently. You know, if you're knocked unconscious, sometimes it takes a little while to get your head around what's happening. And it just so happens that he's in a place where he's got all the clues as to what happened to him. And luckily for the reader as well, there are the clues of all the things that's happened to him. Yeah. But you sort of trapped there, and in the follow up, you sort of, he does eventually get out, but you know, you find out what happens if you read it.
I'll read it.
In 2016, Gary created the Grey Rooms. Thanks, Gary.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for stealing my idea.
Flattery.
Jason's like, no comments.
Invitation is flattery. Yeah, I was impacted by that scene, and not just because of the visual of it, but because of the ramifications of what it meant. That Dan was seeing someone. There's Graham. For all the listeners, Graham just made an appearance on Jason's camera.
On 2 screens.
Oh man! Does anybody see Graham? I don't see him.
For Dan, the realization that other people were going through what he was going through, whatever he did or didn't know what was going on to him, that was definitely impactful that you included that scene. You didn't even have, the fact that he had already done what he had done and was just going through it again was this clue that, like, you're in a bad place, and this guy's just going through the motions. So yeah, it just added to that, that heartbreak that Dan must have been going through, trying to figure out what's going on. Very well done.
Yeah. I kind of wanted it, you know, obviously you got to have something frightening happening as well. And I kind of wanted the readers to think, what is going on? You know, he's seen these things. Why is he seeing these things? You know, are they ghosts? Are they, you know, what are they? You know, and then obviously the twist at the end is that he's as trapped as they are, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was so well written. Oh, yeah. Good concept. Great concept.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, man. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really great example of that whole show versus tell kind of thing, I think, because a lot of the descriptions that I got from this story were from the writing. It wasn't even like, you know, sound effects in the background of a telephone ringing. It wasn't like anything in particular except for the actual writing. And I think when I was talking to Jason about the sound, that really came through. Like, I don't think I've ever been so immersed in a story that was like an audio kind of story. Like, it felt like the story was written specifically to be read in an audio drama or on a podcast because of the descriptive words that you used and how you set the scene. And it was like, I was there, you know, when I was listening to it. It felt like I was Dan, you know.
Yeah, it took place in Dan's head. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was really, really great. Really well done.
Oh, it's really flattering when I hear you say that, because when I listen to it, like I said, I felt that the Grey Room's production and the voice actor, you know, Warren, I think he completely elevated the story, but I can still spot mistakes in there. You know, when I'm listening to it, I'm like, I should have reworded that, or I should have worded that slightly differently, or, you know, I should have squeezed another word in there, but...
That's for sure being a writer.
Oh, absolutely. And my excuse is it is literally the first thing I ever had published, but it's fantastic, and it's still one of my favorite stories.
As a fan, we don't hear that. We heard perfection, so don't worry.
Yeah,
no. Thanks, Brooks. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. It's very, very well done. Let's see, what else do I have?
Hey, Gary, while she's checking some stuff out there, I did kind of want to ask. So most of your story, well, all of it really is, except for maybe the scene in the bathroom, is all focused in one specific setting. As a writer, how, you know, was that kind of a challenge to you to kind of just have like one major scene and kind of work with just that, and really with just like maybe one character with a couple really small interactions?
Honestly, I think it was just. I did want it to be definitely just a one-man thing from the beginning, but honestly, I think it was just me and the limitations I had as a new writer at the time. I just wanted to sort of walk before I ran, and it created, you know, by restricting yourself, you become more creative. And by limiting myself to the one room, and just limiting myself to like 2 or 3 sort of key scenes, it was easy for me as a new writer, but it was also in a way quite challenging, just to make everything a little more creative, I think. So that's how that sort of bit worked.
Cool. We actually got a question in the comments from Arthur Unk. He asks, do you think the definition of horror changes depending on the country? Like Japanese horror versus American horror, but in your case, from the UK versus American horror, or any other country, do you think that there's a difference between your version of horror and like our version?
I think the States and England are quite closely aligned culturally when it comes to things like that. I grew up watching American films. Very, very few of the films I watched when I was younger were English. So I mean, man, I grew up like on Nightmare on Elm Street and, watching things like that. So I think England and America are very similar culturally. I think when you go to places like Asia and stuff like that, then it is slightly different. And there's actually a formula, when it comes to Asian horror in the films and in Asian horror writing, the formula differs slightly. I think I read somewhere about like in sort of Western horror, bad things happen to those who deserve it, whereas in Asian horror, it's written more towards like unfortunate things happening to normal people.
Yeah.
So I think in answer to your question, I think in Arthur's question, sorry, there is a cultural difference, but between English and the Americans and generally the Western sort of side of things, I think it's very similar.
Yeah, I agree. I honestly think the only place they really vary is when it comes to comedy. Like Monty Python is completely different than like Mad TV or something like that. But when it comes to horror, it's pretty much the same thing. It's just that it feels a little bit more real, especially as an American, to read horror that happens like on like farmland and like in Scotland where there's like huge open plains and like forests that are 10 feet tall and crazy like that. So I think that's really the difference. It's
I think whenever an American film producer wants to sort of display something that's meant to be sort of real and we're very serious, they often sort of cast English actors and stuff, like the Star Wars films and stuff like that.
As the bad guys, I was going to say usually.
All the bad
nobility.
Guys,
I think some people may still be holding on to a couple of 100 years of like some pent up teenage aggression. I don't know.
Yeah.
You're not a bad guy, Gary. I don't think you're a bad guy. Just want you to know.
I'm horrible.
But you sound like one.
And that was Brooks.
It's a British voice. Come on.
Yeah. That's funny. But at the same time, we always tend to notice, like, if it's not the bad guy, it's always the very successful conglomerate, huge business running mogul, this guy who pretty much runs the world. So it's not the bad guy.
It's an association with nobility.
It's the royalty. The
royalty.
It's
the
like
British brings out that nobleness.
There's no middle ground there, except for in the Great War. We had some middle ground in the Great War.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, especially unless you're speaking in like a Cockney accent, where it's kind of lower class in that sense.
Yeah,
that's probably where that would come from. But otherwise,
I'm like
in really bad things or educated in really good things.
Gary, did you like Graham's voice when he did that? Was it authentic?
Yeah. Oh, it was so authentic.
Hey, thanks for making sure my story was more British there, Gary. I think there was some.
Yeah,
he's the one that was going through the Great War and kind of made a couple dialogue changes and things. He's like, stop saying "made" every 5 seconds, or whatever I was saying.
No, I thought Graham did a really good job of that actually, and. To be fair, Brian, your writing wasn't a million miles away, But yeah, they do sort of. It's a bit Dick Van Dyke sometimes when you get American people sort of, where you get.
Is that what we are?
No.
Well, I remember you changed my term for a cigarette to tab, and I never heard that before.
Tab.
What they call tab?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you say that now? Is that like an old thing? Okay, so it's like old
It's,
time.
Yeah, something my granddad would say. You know, can you pass me a tab? You know, it's just means a
like
cigarette.
tab.
Yeah, you got a tab or a woodbine or you know stuff like that. You know.
Did you use the term? Did you call it bully beef?
Yeah, what is the bully from? Where does the bully come from?
Beef.
The bully beef.
We need to know.
It's tinned beef, that isn't it? Bully beef. So yeah,
bully. What's the word? What's
it's
the
like
word?
Our corned beef is different to what you would call corned beef. To us, the corned beef's the tin stuff. You know, it comes in a tin and it has a little key, and you undo the top of the tin with the bits of corn in and stuff. That's corned beef. Bully beef. I don't know why they called it bully beef, but that's basically what it is.
Okay.
Bully beef.
Brian likes bully beef, right? You like corned beef.
I love it.
You're a corned beef fan. Yeah.
A little Taft in there.
Hey,
Have a tab afterwards.
They got a question for Gary. Does Gary listen to music when he writes? What are some of his non-horror influences that inspire his muse?
Oh, wow. I can't listen to music when I write.
Turn the lights down when you talk about the mood part there.
Yeah. No, I think I wrote a couple of stories listening to Beastie Boys.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well done.
But yeah, often it sort of distracts me. I'm really into rock music and metal, and I've been with my significant other for 17 years. We have 2 children together now, but we met in a rock club in Manchester.
Awesome.
So yeah, a place called Jilly's Rock World. It's now a supermarket, but yeah, it's so yeah. I grew up listening to like Pearl Jam, Metallica, even stuff like Blink-182. I love Blink-182. The Offspring. But I listen to Beastie Boys as well.
You're like 10 years behind us all.
Yeah, I know, it's mad. I'm an old man.
Hey, I had Beastie Boys on cassette tape when I was in 4th grade.
Wow.
Jason, what's a cassette tape?
It was a brand new album when I was in 4th grade, so bag out. I'm the old man here. I'll wear that badge.
Jason is the true gray beard in this group here.
I was just gonna say,
I remember Betamax.
Person here, that doesn't happen very often.
Gosh, but outside of horror, horror's quite a lot of my life. I read horror, I like watching horror, but outside of horror, what do I like to do? I'm into 3D print. So my day job is. I'm a 3D print technician, so I work with some quite advanced technology at work.
That's so cool.
So we do really rewarding, cool things like printing prosthetic limbs for children.
Oh.
And we do a lot of research. I'm working with a student at the moment who's designing sort of colourful and easy to use prosthetic limbs for kids, because the problem at the moment with the NHS over here in England is that I don't know if it's the same in the States, but they're struggling to produce prosthetic limbs for kids quick enough because they grow so fast. And it's quite important for the children to keep their whatever they've got left of an arm or whatever they've got there active, so that the nerves are working and stuff. So the beauty of 3D print is it's a very quick turnaround. So 2 or 3 days we can have a prosthetic limb done for a kid, and we can make it fun and we can make it bright and we can put attachments on it. So I'm working with fashion students at the university where I work, and I'm working with product design students, experimenting with densities and all sorts of things, printing in plastic. So we print these arms for them. At the moment, they're literally using they look like dolls' arms, you know, they're just useless. But we're doing things with attachments on to help them swim, and we've even gone with a rattle on the end, you know, for a little kid and stuff like that. So I'm sort of very passionate about sort of things like that. I'm also quite into, I'm doing jobs for the Christie Hospital, which is a big cancer hospital over here. We've been printing tumours, 3D printing tumours, not literally sort of made from flesh or anything, but made from different densities of plastic. So we have soft and hard plastic, and they can scan it and research it, and just sort of the idea is they know how to spot tumours when they're scanning them and things like that. So we don't just do sort of hospital-based things or, you know, medical-based things. We do all sorts across the spectrum, but it's a really good job, and I'm quite passionate about it. And so that's what I do outside of my writing.
You're directly helping humanity during your day job.
I know.
You
I
are a
just
true
put
hero.
junk
Come on,
mail in
man.
people's boxes. I feel like, oh, what the heck?
Yeah.
What the heck?
Hey,
I'm humbled.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm an
geez.
accountant. I do nothing.
Oh,
You
man.
helping children. That's awesome. It's really,
That's
really
really
awesome.
cool. Well done, man. Very noble.
Oh, wow.
And I also shoot puppets. No, I'm kidding.
The truth came out.
I kick bags full of kittens.
Throw them in rivers. Oh, my God. We're going to hell.
And we just lost some subscribers.
Oh, sorry, I do apologize. I'm kind of good at that sort of thing, opening my big mouth. But no.
Gary's skeletons in his closet.
Yeah. But it's a lot of fun. So that's what that's my what else to do.
That's brilliant.
It's pretty neat, man. That's really cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's one of the coolest things I love about this behind the scenes episode is we get to really like find out who these authors are aside from just their stories. I wish every podcast did this. That would be just the coolest thing ever. Find out a little bit more about them. And another one of my favorite questions that commonly gets asked on the Behind the Door is, what is your favorite horror movie? I love that question. I need to know.
Oh gosh, my favorite horror movie. Ooh.
Well, really seriously.
So, no, there's a few that I kind of grew up on. I'd say Halloween. The original Halloween is one of my favorites.
Oh, okay.
I also like Jaws. If you could count that as a horror movie, I'd say it's
you
horror
can
film.
count that as
That
horror.
stupid movie made me afraid of the tub.
Damn that movie.
Oh, to let the water out the drain. It's like, I gotta get out before I open that drain. Yeah.
Gosh. Well, my dad saw saw Jaws when he was on holiday in Cornwall, and they went to the cinema there, watched Jaws, and then came out, and it was lovely and warm, and everyone was out in the waters, and my dad was like, "I'm not going out there." So at the time, it was like a brand new film, and the concept was quite new, and it scared the hell out of him. But I really like Dolls as well. Has any of you seen Dolls, the 1987 film? It's by the guy who did Reanimator.
I was going to say, I think I
with
recognize that
Reanimator.
because I was into Reanimator and a Puppet Master too. I think I know that.
Dolls is fantastic. That's got a cheesy English person in it as well. They were a punk in that one. So, you forgot the punk stereotype as well,
Oh,
yeah. So that's Dolls is that when I watched that when I was too young to watch it really, and it scared the hell out of me. Yeah, it really did. I was like, oh my god, and it's so well done. These little creepy porcelain things with like glassy eyes, and if you sort of hit them or anything or break the porcelain, they've got like little miniature skulls underneath, and you have to watch it. It's cheesy as anything. I mean, now when you watch it, you sort of kind of laugh at it, but at the time it was really scary. And
so that was like your first horror movie that you ever saw that you remember?
One of them, yeah.
Okay.
I think the other one was probably Jaws. I think Jaws was the first horror film I ever watched, in that sort of thing. But yeah, if I had to go for a favourite, it'd be Halloween. But then again, The Shining's really good. I really like that as well.
And that's interesting because your brand of horror doesn't seem to be aligned with either of those. So you just kind of immersed yourself completely in the horror, and you're like, well, this works for other people, and then this works for me. So it's interesting to kind of disconnect. That's cool.
I've never thought about it that way, but it's true.
That's neat. So we have people commenting and stuff, and somebody mentioned your short story collection, right? You have a short story collection published. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. It's it's almost like a year and a half old now. It's called Mechanisms of Despair, and it's a collection of. It's very short. It must be like 20,000 words or something like that. But it's a collection of short psychological horror stories, including The Way Out, The Way In. There's another one called Escape, which also touches on the sort of suicide thing. And it's all the stories I had published with Deadman's Tome, collected together. The front cover is really cool for it. It's a Marvel artist called Sean Langley did the cover for it. So that's really cool. And all proceeds from it go to charity. So half of the proceeds go to Alzheimer's Foundation in the United States, and half the proceeds go to Sarcoma UK. which is it's a bone and soft tissue cancer charity, and that my mum was suffering from. So all the proceeds go to charity. I don't mean to make a bean out of it. So if anyone's listening who wants to give it a go, give it a buy. Get it.
It's on Amazon.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah, I put a link up in the chat room.
Thank you. Yeah. Give it a buy. I don't care about sales or anything. Just as long as that money goes to the charities, that's what matters.
Mm-hmm. Good man.
That's awesome.
Might throw a link of that into the show description when we post this up.
Thank you.
Show notes.
Not a problem.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I'm just sitting here trying to think like, okay, Gary, all right, you proceed your books are going to like taking care of people. You're building all these prosthetics for people. You do this for people. I'm like, what the?
What do you do for yourself?
But then he writes stories and he kills people.
What am I doing with my life? What am I doing? I donate to bacon. I don't.
Can I donate to bacon? How do you donate to bacon? Tell me.
Yeah. Well, you donate with a purchase and then you eat it.
Okay.
Is this where I say feed the pig and everybody goes, "Oh!"
Classic NSP story.
Gary's obviously a really, actually a nice guy. So people might want to take the opportunity to, listen to the story, read his stories, go on Amazon, check it out, do what you can to support. Sounds like it's really, everything's just kind of linked together in this really big, great means. So yeah.
Even if you just like expensive toilet roll, just buy a copy of my book for that, that money.
How smooth is the paper of your books, Gary?
It's beautiful. It feels so good.
Is it 2 or 3 ply? Augie got it.
Budget constraints, it's recycled single ply.
Oh, that's no good.
So you turn it on half, it rips off. It's brittle.
Might I suggest if you guys do end up reading his stories, like read them aloud to yourself, because like I was saying, the way out seemed like it was almost written to be read as an audio drama. So it's not that it doesn't make sense like on your screen, but it's more powerful if you're actually reading it and kind of like bringing all the words forward and using them the way they're supposed to be used. And like there's excellent vocabulary throughout the whole stories, any of his stories really. I only listened to the podcast and read the way in, but I just judging by those, these are just amazing stories. So like read them out loud to yourself. I read them to my cat, but yourself is also a good option.
Are they both in your book?
Gary told me from when he first published this to now, was like 31 short stories published.
I've got a little published folder on my G drive and it's got my published stuff in there, and I think I've had 31 stories published since then. Thank you. Not all together, but sort of over various places. I've got a story in Unnerving magazine. I've got a story coming up in Gallows Hill magazine. I've got 2 in Gallery of Curiosities, which is another podcast. Loads, some flash pieces, some slightly longer. But I'm just a developing writer, I'm just doing the same as you guys. I write as often as I can. Just constantly sending things out, updating my spreadsheet, rejection. I think I was saying to Brian yesterday, I've got a story that's my sort of nearly story. And it's been on so many shortlists for so many professional places, but never actually made it in, including Clark's World. It was on the shortlist for Clark's World. So that's the one I'm trying to push at the moment. I'm like, try to get it out, try and find a home for it, but it's still unpublished at the minute.
You want to talk about that story in case anybody's listening to this, and maybe you can,
plug it.
Plug it away.
It's a dark fairy tale. It's only a short story. It's called Nanny, and there's a slight sort of twist on the fairy, the Mary Poppins sort of thing. There's 2 children. They're in this home. In this house, and this nanny comes. She literally drifts from the sky over the graveyard, and she's like a skeletal, sort of almost like an undead kind of nanny. And you sort of discover the story about these 2 children and why they're alone and why they're trapped in a house. They're not dead, or they might be. No, but they are literally trapped in this house, and they've obviously had a very difficult upbringing, and and she basically helps them, and they tidy the house, sort of a bit like Mary Poppins and stuff like that. But I think it's just like I think people tend to like it because it is very fairy tale, when you're reading it, and but it's very dark as well. So I'm kind of hoping that someone will pick that short story up. I've had really good feedback about it, of so many people, but obviously not enough to publish it yet.
Interesting concept, flying over the graveyard into the house. Like, well, where do these people live?
Yeah, well, by a graveyard.
You should turn it into a musical.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, if Young Frankenstein can become a musical, anything can.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely.
I still think we need to make a musical for the Grey Rooms, like the Wardenstein thing or whatever.
Well, the Warden has just got so much comedic appeal. If you hear the Patreon stories, oh my goodness, I love the Warden. Warden could totally pull that off.
My joke is I'm going to get Jason to end up singing in a part somehow, some way. And that's why it's like that. He smiles. I think he actually froze. Jason, are you scared or are you just freezing?
I think you should do like the Buffy thing. You like the Buffy did a musical episode. You should do a musical episode.
Horror and comedy go together so well. It's a good marriage.
They're very, very close. They sometimes you get scared and you laugh. It's a natural reaction to something. But yeah, they're closer than you think.
I think we lost Jason over there.
I do, yeah. I don't know if I should kick him out and come back in. Maybe I should do that.
Jason's iPhone overheated, apparently.
I'm moving to a different room. He's getting... Oh, no, that was 32 minutes ago.
32 minutes? He's been on... He's been on autopilot for 30 minutes, guys. I kicked him out. I'm going to go at him again, just if I can figure out what his email address is. Go ahead. Pay no attention to the man behind
Proceed.
I'm trying to think of another question. We've already run out of all the questions that I have. Yeah. Brooks, do you have any more? You seem to have a lot of questions I didn't even think of.
Yeah. I also didn't know if you said for The Way In, is that in your book? Is The Way Out also? Are those two stories in your book? Or these are written after the book? Okay, they are in the book.
The sequel to The Way Out.
And The Way In is the sequel to The Way Out. And it explains, without revealing anything, it explains more about Dan, or is it completely different?
It's a different story, but it links back to the Way Out, and there are a few more clues as to what's happened. And I don't really want to spoil that too much. But yeah.
I like when authors start to world build, and you don't necessarily have to put links in every story, but just kind of in the author's mind, setting the stories in the same world, and eventually you would be able to kind of start linking things together just because the writing is there. You're subconsciously keeping them connected, but like it's really cool to hear stories interconnected that way as a part of world building. Are you doing that? Have you done that with the stories that are in your book, or are they just you had a prompt, a seed, and then you wrote a new story, and then you wrote another new story, just like that?
Yeah, there are little bits. I think some of the stories do take place in, I suppose you'd call it a different universe, but there are little reoccurring places in my stories, mostly based on the place where I grew up when I was a child and stuff like that. And there are little links, just little things, nothing major between the stories. But The Way Out and Way In, obviously being sort of direct brothers, so to speak, the links are stronger in there. And if you've read the first one, the sequel will sort of make sense a little bit more.
Okay.
Yeah.
It references it in a way that you don't have to read The Way Out first, but if you do, it's like, whoa, at the end. It like blows your mind. It's so good.
I'm really glad you enjoyed it.
Oh, it was so good. I loved it. Because not only is it like the same universe, but it's expanding it in a way that's like beyond that one room. It's the whole floor of the hotel. And it's not just the one person who's affected. It's another character who's being affected in the same way. And it's like, then you realize that there's something wrong with the hotel itself. And it's not just Dan. There's other people who are affected because the hotel somehow has this way of affecting people who have had dramatic losses in their lives. And it like changes that kind of into a way that makes it scary for each person in a different way, which I love it. It was so well done.
Thank
I don't
you.
want to give anything away, but it was so good.
If you would like to read The Way In, outside of Gary's book, he does have it published. You can access it on his webpage.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I read it on the Dead Man's Tome blog.
Yeah, and there's a link to a lot of Gary's stories on GaryABuller.blogspot.com. If you want to help help a good cause, you can buy his book, support him that way. But you can also access The Way In online. It's published as well. If you just kind of want to find out what's going on right now, we'll post that we'll put those links up on Twitter and probably Facebook and things.
That's cool. By the way, I've not updated that blog for so long. It's been like about a year and a half or something. But yeah, everything. Yeah, the book's on there and everything. But thanks very much.
Yeah, it was very well done. We have another question from Arthur in the comments, who is like saving my ass because I didn't think of so many questions. He said, "What is the last book everyone read or is currently reading?" Gary, do you want to start?
The book I'm currently reading is Elevation, Stephen King. And the next one I've got lined up is, what's it called? Someone recommended it to me, just checking my Audible account. It's called We Need to Talk About Kevin by Lionel Shriver.
I've heard of that one. That's on my TBR pile.
Yeah, that's next to be read. So it's about, I believe it's about a school shooting or a kid that's done a school shooting. It's about his parents. So yeah, that's next on the list. But Elevation's really good. I've enjoyed it.
Nice. Jason, are you reading any books?
Nope.
No, what the fuck?
Currently, I actually spend most of my time, if not listening to sound effects or anything like that, I do listen to a lot of audio books or podcasts. But lately, I've been doing a lot of, I guess, just YouTube stuff and things like that, just to kind of hone my craft to get better at being a producer. So, but as far as books, no. Work 2 jobs, 3 if you count this one. If I get an audio book, but gosh dang it, I just tell you what, I'm just so entranced with the podcast world anymore. So I applaud people who can take the time to read a book. I think that you should. I think it expands your horizons, increases your intellect. And speaking of books, I see you have one behind you, Augie. Let's not forget to talk about that a little bit. So.
Wow, I get the chance to shamelessly promote myself. This is the Short Stories of Augie Peterson, Volume 1. It's the edited, revamped version of all of my stories that I have on my blog put into a book. Also, I just recently published my Night Vision anniversary edition. The first book I ever wrote was called Night Vision, and I did it at the end of 2017. And then over the course of 2018, I wrote a new story every week and got better at it. So I realized very quickly that my first book was absolute trash. So I decided to rewrite all of those stories into an anniversary edition, and then I published that, and it's so much better. So you can find that on Amazon. But this isn't about me.
Well, it's about
it is right now.
Everybody got a book. People need to know about your book too.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a couple of books up, and it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal at the same time. I drove myself insane trying to get it published in time for Halloween. So I did that, and it's pretty good, if I do say so myself. It's like the first selection of original stories that aren't already posted on my blog that I'm really proud of. So there's that. Currently, though, I am reading 2 books because I have ADHD and I can't focus on one book for more than one moment. I'm reading An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by a guy named Hank Green, who is a pretty big deal. He's awesome. And then I'm also reading The Trouble with Being God, which is a book by Bill Aker. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. A-I-C-H-E-R. He's a Twitter friend.
Excuse me.
Writer, awesome dude.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's this right here, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's that one right there. That's the one I'm reading. And it's
you know what? Good. I bet you don't have his blood on it.
I do, actually.
He gave you that copy? Oh, Bill.
You're not special. I have one of those proofs that he was giving out that was like a unedited proof or something like that. I have one of them. and I have his thumbprint in red ink, and I'm super excited. It's
no, that's not ink. That's his blood.
Yeah. Well, hey, if I ever need to commit a murder, I know what books to put in.
And when it gets to that way, we'll just send it over to Gary and 3D print them.
Hey Gary, could you 3D print this mask behind me?
Yes, I was just gonna add.
Probably, yeah.
For a non-noble cause.
Oh, I will have nothing
Depends on
to
who
do
you
with
ask.
Jason's like, nope.
By the way, last time we had a hint about one of our upcoming stories, and with Renfield Rasputin behind him, there might be a hint for one of my stories behind me coming up in 2 weeks.
Ooh.
Graham Rowe is all over that story.
What's that?
It's a musical about Mario Brothers. I have to burst the bubble.
He's a main character. He's a sound designer. He's the actor. He's the woman. He's the male. He's everything. He's Graham Rowe. He's everything.
Graham does everything.
How
We are
daring it
Graham.
must be to be him in this list, and all of us always talk about
He doesn't have to be in the episode. I mean, we usually part of what I do is, when I'm working on an episode, I work on, with Jason, and I work with Graham, and so typically what I do is I say, hey, Graham, what do you think about this? And he answers me in my mind. So
I'm worried for you, Brian.
Yeah, you should hear this gentleman when he's in the drive-through. He's got some problems. If anybody who gets a drink without ice, I got issues.
You ask for no ice?
Right?
Wow.
What is that about? I mean, that's
It's got
weird.
Ebola.
Transylvania or something.
or Risky Stones or whatever. Hey, by the
Actually,
way,
that's smart.
I don't know.
Because then you're getting more soda.
I don't know if you can see it. Oh, it's not showing up too well. This is the book I'm reading.
Oh, Bo!
Yeah, we got Bo Chappell's. By Year's End. It's an anthology. It's actually a kind of a continuation, sort of a prequel of Year 47. So Bo's stories really good. All the people that were a part of that, and really, if you read Year 47, it's a pretty fantastic apocalyptic story.
That's another one I'm in the middle of right now.
There you go. See, she just reads all the books at the same time. And
I'm only halfway through all the books. Don't say I've read them all.
But it's a really good book. That's something I would check out as well.
Sweet.
Absolutely, I vouch for Bo. He's amazing. He uses vocabulary I have to look up to understand. Like, he's just so far above all the other writers. Like, he's just like, poof. But he's amazing. Bo's fantastic. And Gary's fantastic, the author of this story. Everybody's fantastic.
Yay.
We got a Lego movie. Everything is awesome.
Everything is awesome. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go in about 5 minutes, guys.
Yeah,
I'm getting the look from my other half.
Oh.
We're probably gonna want to wrap up now.
Yeah.
You fulfilled your purpose, Gary.
Thank you. I'll go back up to the shadows. Bye.
Back to the shadows.
Well, thanks again, Gary, for allowing us to utilize your story. I think actually, before I go on my little tirade here, I think Brooke still had a book he needed to mention.
Brooke.
Oh yeah.
Real quick, I'm a fan of odd writing. I like an author called his name is Carlton Mellick III, and the book I'm reading is called The Terrible Thing That Happens, and it takes place in an apocalypse, and it's about a grocery store in the apocalypse that these survivors magically every night the food keeps reappearing there, but also the ghosts of someone keeps coming and killing anybody that also goes when the food appears. It's a really interesting story. It's very strange. Yeah. So that's what I'm reading right now.
That's kind of neat sounding. I kind of like that. That's
Carlton Mellick is a very disturbed writer. So
that's all right. What's that called?
It's called The Terrible Thing That Happens.
Oh.
He writes like a new book like every few months. They're like 150, 200 pages, like small, short. They're like $10 on Amazon. It's very interesting writer.
So. That sounds interesting. I like that. That's right up my kind of friggin' alley right there.
Got some strange stories I think you'd find fascinating. That'll be your first book to start reading again. You could do it.
Yeah. I can remember.
Jason's first book ever.
We need to take a break from the podcast.
Never.
Oh.
So she got big things coming, man. Hopefully we'll be able to do that real soon. But yeah, Gary, excellent story, man. Thanks for submitting it. Thanks for letting us use it.
No problem.
It was a lot of fun, man. I know I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it, that what makes this become progressively easier for me as I learn how to do this is getting to work not just with professional actors and actresses and, J.M. Scherf with his awesome ability to create a great music score, which unfortunately he didn't have anything to do with this story. This was before he came along. That's why he's not here. But the authors writing exceptionally easy, just well done stories that translate good to audio just makes my life that much easier. And that's why I think the Grey Rooms is having the kind of success we do, because of this nucleus of exceptionally talented people that I get the honor to work with. So again, thanks for letting us use your story, bud. And I do hope that, like everybody else, I do hope that you take the opportunity to submit another one for season 2, because you are a gifted author, you're a good guy, and it would be nice to be able to talk to you again, man.
You might have already submitted one.
Is it season 2?
Season 2.
March 1st, deadline. Let's go. Let's get those stories in, people.
Yeah, if everybody writes, amazing stories, we might kick Gary out a little bit. So,
I'll go up that game.
Oh God, no. Thanks very much, guys. And it's sort of come back at you really with it. It's taken a story, and elevated it so far above what it was, and it's made it into something completely new. And it was an absolute pleasure when I first listened to it. I thought the sound effects were fantastic. I thought Warren was absolutely brilliant. And I like the way that it fits in to another sort of anthology story as well, which is really, really, really cool. So thank you guys, and thanks very much for having me on, and to all of you, thanks very much for all the questions.
Hey,
and
your
everything.
story kicked us over 60,000 too, Gary. Good job.
Wow. Well, you're welcome.
Nice.
On the round of applause, man.
Okay. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
We'll see y'all in 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Oh,
Thank you, Augie, by the way. You're the best ever.
Yeah, thanks,
I want to see
Great
some of your
host.
stories.
I'm happy to do it.
Thanks,
This was
Brooks.
a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. So, yay.
And I would like to say, we get all kinds of people. We get podcast people that are focusing primarily on the podcast because that's what they're interested in. So when we get a writer who's guest hosting, it's really good because they really pick apart the story in a way that a writer would. So that's why we're kind of switching up these guest hosts. Mm-hmm. It kind of really, gives a different perspective for everything that we're doing. So,
and it makes,
thank you so much.
Me feel like a part of the community too. Like I've never really felt like part of something bigger than myself until I was asked to do this. Like, hey, you submitted something that we're using. Do you want to interview this other person? And then just kind of like make connections here and make connections there and like be this person who's like in this community and one of the room makers and like, heck yeah. Cool? And I didn't understand like the family aspect that would come with that. And I'm just so thankful to be a part of this community. It's like amazing. And even listening to the podcast.
High five. See, you earlier before we started, you were like, "Oh man, you and Jason, it's like you guys are a married couple." It's like, and you know what? See, it happens. For some reason, we get all our group together, even new people, they just hang around. It's great. So thank you so much.
Before I go, can I just say one more thing?
Oh yeah,
yes, sir.
Just one more thing. I do a podcast every Sunday. I'm actually doing this instead of it.
Yeah.
But I just want to throw that out there. Otherwise, the guy that I do it with, will be really upset with me. So Horror with Mark Casey and Bullo. We sometimes interview people. We talk about literature. We talk about all sorts of stuff. Sometimes we get into trouble. It's great. No, it isn't. But yeah, we're every Sunday. So if you get the opportunity, please listen. But yeah, this has been really, really good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, buddy. And again, we look forward to more of your additions to this because you helped make this what it is. This is growing, it's getting bigger, and that's because of you and everybody else. So thanks a lot, brother. Appreciate it.
Yep. Next week, in 2 weeks, our next story is going to be Fairy Tale by myself. We're going to have, when we do the Behind the Door, we talked about Dead Man's Tome. And actually the creator of Dead Man's Tome, the publisher, Mr. Deadman, Jesse, I don't know what his last name is. Was it
Deadman? His name's Jesse Deadman. That's his real name.
For real? I thought that was a joke. All right.
No.
Deadman. Yeah. He'll be the guest host. So he does podcasts too. So I'm sure he'll have a lot of input for us as a publisher as well. So we'll be seeing that. So thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm going to hit the stop broadcast button, and we'll see you.
See ya. Bye. Bye.
Drinks on Brian.
Raymond's going to